Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. One of my favorite shows that I've ever done was a translation by Father Robert Nixon, who actually was the first person to translate a book from Latin into English. And that book did quite well because he talked about the tortures of purgatory. Well, we're here to talk about another one of the translations he did. Father Robert Nixon seems to like the things that really got hidden for sometimes obvious reasons or not. Well, my guest today is the publisher of that book. It is Steve Cunningham. He is the president of the, I always say Latin incorrectly, Sensus Fidelium Press. And he is also the host of, you're going to love this, Clown Planet News. Don't even get me started. We could do this whole show just on that because we sure feel like we live on a clown planet sometimes, Steve. So you're here today with me. I should talk to you and not him, but he's here with me today to talk about a book about a commonly misunderstood figure in history, Martin Luther. Don't turn the dial. This one's going to be pretty kind of, I don't know, out there, graphic in a sense. But the book is called The Devil's Bagpipe. The True Life of Martin Luther, the true life. So, Steve, I'm so excited that you're here to talk with my viewers about this book because he sure, some of us get painted in a bum way, but sometimes your people get painted in a nice way that you're thinking, how on earth did that person get known that way when the truth really is such and such? So, first of all, welcome. And second of all, what are your thoughts on once you read this, this book on Luther?
I appreciate you having me. Thanks for that. One of my thoughts, man, I first read it about, what we do, about 5 months ago, I think he asked me, Father did, which, sorry everyone out there, you got the second tier guy, me. It would have been way cooler if he was on this one. But I told him, dude, we got to have this printed. This, I don't know why anybody would say no to this. And this is from the 1500s. I mean, literally a guy that was contemporary of Luther, wrote this book. And so it's one of those, you get a lot of other ones that you get a lot of like
secondary opinions or
yeah,
people, a friend of a friend.
There's a great book out that Tan publishes called Luther, The Facts About Luther, but there's zero citations in it. And so and that's like the main thing everyone ever asks about is where are the citations at? It's a fantastic book, but if you're gonna not smack somebody over the face with it or say, hey, read this book on Luther, you want to be able to back your sources up. You know what I mean? Like
Well, there's
this
so many
guy did
lies
this.
out there right now, and I think people have come to learn, for instance, don't believe anything Google says, or Google never lies, right? I mean, you've got to be able to source where you're getting something from because no one trusts the media anymore. We don't
Oh yeah.
trust what's in there. So you've got to cite it. So this book, what you were saying, this book was written by, okay, let's go backwards. James Laing wrote the original Latin book, and he was born in 1499. He wrote this book, I think you said around 1581. So he's alive at the same time that Luther was. Luther came out with his theses in, I think, 1517. So here he is walking around in, as you said, the contemporary, same time frame. So he's going to know a heck of a lot more of this guy than anybody 200 years later will know when they try to paint a picture. So he wrote this book, and then Nixon just interpreted it. You know, here we are 500 years later saying, let's put this thing in English. And so, yeah, the citations in the book are absolutely essential. And the truths that people are learning about, the temper, his vitriol, his drunkenness, I think the book even talked about his demonic conversations or conversations with demons that Luther would have. It's like, this book is really correcting those myths of Luther, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll read from the Father Nixon's part in the
Yeah.
translator opinion on here. It goes, Lang, born in 1499, had actually lived through the events in question and would hardly have falsified his account of Luther's actions, many of which took place in a very public arena and were still matters of official record and general public knowledge. And he goes with his second point, is the 1581 Latin version was published with the full approval and authorization of the faculty of the University of Paris. This venerable body, staffed by the very best scholars of all of Western Europe, would certainly not endorse any work of dubious veracity, even if it were overly pro-Catholic. While the University of Paris was itself a Catholic institution, the standings of scholarship was such that it was firmly committed to the objective truth in matters of historical research. So that's pretty high up too. And
Yeah.
thirdly, the author himself is clearly trying to be as balanced and fair as possible, which if you read that, you'll see that in this, like the death part. He'll say, well, other people have said this. We don't really know exactly, the matters he died. He just doesn't make something up of it. And he goes, in very few instances where he introduces legends or unverified rumors which were in circulation at the time, he openly acknowledges them to be such. He brings up Luther's death. He openly confesses his uncertainty, something which a partisan historian would hardly be inclined to do unless he had genuine regard for veracity. So he just lays out, he goes, all right, here's this guy's background, give you an idea. It's like, again, this isn't just some blogger online that's trying to get clicks with a cool title or something like that.
Right.
This guy literally, lived through it, worked at an institution where they kind of cared about their,
reputation and their scholarship.
Yes. And back then, probably, take let's say like Harvard or Yale or something, and put it exponentially to the 30th power in the sense of reputation wise. They were not, we are Catholic, but this is truth no matter what. Take it or leave it. And it just gets to the idea. This isn't made up. He actually says, I don't know. It's kind of like the whole idea when apologetics, the best response sometimes goes, I don't know, but I'll look and find out. He doesn't just make up like, not saying Bellarmine made this up, but Bellarmine talks about the one, was it the one miracle of Luther in his book on the controversies. So, oh no, yeah, Luther, because he writes kind of like in a smart alecky sense, and says, no, his body was so stink. It was in the middle winter in an airtight coffin, and his body stunk so bad that they couldn't move it. Hence, hence the miracle of Luther. There's no citation right now. Could be made up, maybe not. It was one of those Bellarmine kind of like jabs. If you ever read him, he does that a lot. But this guy, he literally says, I don't really know, but here's some stuff that went around that time.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of this, is you have to start with the foundations of veracity, as you said. Let's go with truth. And I love the fact that the original author, Laing, he's alive, same time Luther is. He's watching this. He's watching how culture changed. He watched how people changed. He knew what the Catholic Church was doing. And to say, well, whoa, wait a minute, what you're writing isn't truthful and stuff. So we really, we're Catholics. So we want the truth. We want people to become Catholic, but I don't want BS. I just want the truth. Tell me about this. So what do we know about Luther? He did not, I think most people know that, okay, he married a nun from the convent. He took her and he married her. I also knew he had a mental disorder. I heard a Protestant preacher saying he had mental illness.
Yeah, and all those, the people around him thought that too. One cool small tidbit that really doesn't matter is that he was born on the vigil of St. Martin's. So that's why he gets the name Martin, because the parents had devotions because of Martin. St. Martin was the next day. And his last name was Luther, which translates into whore. So that's why they changed his last name to Luther, because they didn't want his kid to be, hey.
Wait, it was whore, you said?
The translation of Luther, Luder, it would be whore. So they changed his last name to Luther.
Yeah, let's just fix this one here.
It started right off the bat. It was right. The kid was messed up from day one. It's good to say. But you heard about the whole story about the lightning that struck and it's right next to him and hit his best friend or one of his friends.
Wait, no, I don't know this story. Tell me this story.
Oh, that was the idea when it was a saint. They were running back. They were coming back from I guess maybe a party or something. Anyways, him and his friend in the middle of a thunderstorm, and lightning strikes and it kills his friend. And right there is when he gets this idea of, I'm going to become a nun. I'm going to become not a nun because I'm going to become a monk. And he thought that was the answer to a prayer, saying he was praying, if you get me out of this, I'll become a monk. And all his friends thought it was just insane because, as they say, and he brings it up in his book, which you see Devil's Bagpipe, that's the woodcut story. You see the devil playing his head as a bagpipe. which I said, we got to use that photo.
Yeah.
And so he runs in there, and all his friends going, he has no piety, no history of this. It was just one of those spur of the moment, irrational ideas. And that was his thing. He ran in, locked the door, and came back and never left. And his arrogance, he thought he was the greatest of, greatest monk, and he was smarter than everybody in there. You're going to know that too, because it was that whole idea when here I stand, here I am. He had that personality of I'm the man. You're not going to tell me I'm not the man. I'm going to do what I want to do, and if you don't like it, you go pound sand. Which you hear them like Michael Davies talk about Luther and Fisher. He pretty much excommunicates anybody that doesn't agree with him, which as Protestant is, you don't like it. That's why they break up all the way down. So, I mean, everything about it was just me, myself, and I. I'm the greatest. I'm Muhammad Ali. I am the greatest. He probably might have said that in the monastery a couple times.
Yeah.
But he was very ambitious. He wanted to be carnal. He wanted to move up in the ranks. So he would kiss tail, do whatever he needed to do to get up in the ranks. And you mentioned the indulgences part. Yes, he follow the money. You heard that line before? Always
All
follow
the
the
time.
money. Well, the Augustinians were in charge of doing the plenary indulgences, to get distributing that out. Tetzel, everyone knows, it's because of Tetzel come in it. Well, Tetzel was not in the Augustinian order from the Dominicans, and they weren't exactly jacked that this other group came in and was taking their money. So again, follow the money. It wasn't just that he was upset about XYZ. He was upset about XYZ because
it was taking the money from him.
And that was just one way of getting it back to him. So again, it's you hear the fantasy parts of we came up to this door and knocked on, which would have been like this big. I don't know. You go to the post office, you see people that stamp, like, you want a puppy, you want this, if you want my, whatever massage therapist. They all put their stuff on their little pinned up. That's kind of what he did. There wasn't like this gigantic, light from the heavens standing down on this and going, no, it's lost with thousands of other things in there. But you make this legend up, and you got to sell the act, and obviously, just the legend gets more extravagant as you go on and on and on. But yeah, I mean, this guy had problems. I mean, mental problems. He had like what would you say, like God type issues. I mean, he created the fifth gospel, his gospel,
Yeah.
which Laing
And
talks
what
about a lot.
gall. Yeah, the gall of taking words out or adding words into the very Bible that says, pretty much damnable is anybody who adds to or subtracts from the word of God. It's like, whoa. And yet he did it. Like saying faith alone. There's so many people that don't realize that Luther added the word alone. You're only saved, you only get to heaven by faith.
Oh yeah,
He's like, well, faith
he said
alone.
if anybody has any problem with that, tell them Dr. Luther said so. And then, okay, dude. Well, here was one of the lines about they're having some problems. He's having some issues with the Pope, and he goes, "Most blessed Father, I prostrate myself before you and cast myself down before the feet of your holiness. All that I am and all that I have done, I offer to you alone. As you will, summon me to life or kill me. Call me to yourself or reprimand me. Approve me or reprove me. Do unto me, I beg of you, whatever best pleases your holiness. For your voice is the very voice of Christ himself, who speaks through you alone. If you consider me deserving of death, then most gladly shall I die." And he didn't mean a word of that. It was, and Laing says, "Behold the malicious words of a guilty and manipulative arch flatterer. Needless to say, all this Luther wrote for no other purpose than to allay the concerns of the pontiff, so that, freed from the scrutiny of his ecclesiastical authorities and beguiling the faithful into believing him loyal to the church, he might more easily plot the ruin of the Catholic religion." And the guy had an agenda and knew how to play the crowd. Think about a politician in a sense. He said what he needed to say, but in his mind, Laing brings it up. He said things with his mouth, but in his heart,
the forked tongue, right?
Yeah.
What did Laing say that the population thought about Luther at the time? Because what I have understood is that when he posted his 72 Theses, he didn't expect he was starting an entire split of the church. It's just that these are the things I'm upset with. So I would think there's a lot of people who are devout Catholics who are like, oh, that's ridiculous. And then there are other people who maybe were upset with the church, or like, yeah, this is it. Lang being alive at that time must have witnessed either the cultural split or well, how they engaged in that. Does he bring that to life in any way?
Yeah, it was more of the higher ups, the royalty people that saw this as an advantage to let's protect this guy. And so that, I mean, because the end result of this was they followed the money, just like you see Henry VIII in England at the time. Fine, 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 and all of a sudden, wait a minute, I can make money off this. Snatch the property from the churches, kill them all in a sense. Which there's a lot of violence that came from this
Oh
because
yeah.
the Pilgrims, not the Pilgrims Revolt, but the People's Revolt. They went after all these people, and he was basically saying, hey, "Go kill them all. It's fine. You want that land? Take it. You're saved. You're in God's hands." Which he actually told the people one time when the Turks come in that oh, you don't need to fight because fighting is not something that people of the God's people would do. And the Hungarian king got killed literally after that, and he took over. Took over. The army got destroyed. So it depends on who you were. Like in Germany, it was those guys that brought him in to protect him. That's why Germany became so Lutheran at the time. And it's like, okay, we'll keep the enemies at bay. And he convinced these guys to do whatever they wanted, which they pretty much killed the hoi polloi in a sense, and took all whatever they had, property, money, whatever. And just when you start doing that, well, shoot, we're doing this in the name of God too. Okay, we're good. And you're telling me that I can do anything I want, sin boldly and all that, just love boldly. Okay, yeah, why not? You just take everything. Oh, that guy wants this. I'll take that. It's like the Landgrave of Holt and his polygamous marriage. I want another wife. Sure, why not? I'll take two. I'll three. I mean, he was the first polygamist. A lot of Lutherans don't know, a lot of Protestants don't know that, but you get to that, there's the top dogs. You get to like I said, he knew how to play the crowd. The people don't have the power. It's the guys with the power that have the power. So he went to those guys and was able to convince them to take him in and protect him, which again was because you guys can go down and you want to take that monastery, go for it.
Normally we would think, okay, whatever, but we don't follow that, or maybe it happens, or how bad can it be? But we're living in a day and age now where we look at that just happened in our own country. We have a leader, a president whose brain is not functioning, and but they didn't care, the evil powers that be. Well, let's just put him in there. Let's just use this person's lack of intellect. Let's use it to our own benefit. So what you're saying about Luther makes perfect sense, because we're seeing it now. It's like, why would anybody want to elect in someone who already has a medical condition and can't think? So it doesn't surprise me at all that they would use him. It's like, oh, he's adult or whatever. He's got this good thing going on. Let's just go. I just wish everybody would read this stuff, because I think at this point, the hardest part will be about this book is getting people to think that they need to pick up one more book about Luther for those who have already read it or been interested in it. But I just think it is so important to know the truth, because at the same time that was happening and the church was falling apart in one area, we had Our Lady at Guadalupe appearing in Mexico, and millions of pagans became Catholic. So it's like, yeah, God is still going to keep his church united when it's falling apart. But let me ask you, and stop me if there's something you want to say in particular, but before we went on the air, you were talking about his wife. Now, I think common knowledge or popular knowledge is that Luther was a priest, left the priesthood, but he married a nun who was in the convent. The society wasn't so thrilled with her, were they?
Yeah, they called her the she donkey of Jerusalem was her nickname.
The she donkey of what?
The she donkey of Jerusalem.
Of Jerusalem.
Yeah, Laing writes a little bit to make matters worse, this heinous crime was committed during Holy Week in the 9 days leading up to the most sacred Paschal Triduum. Needless to say, Luther congratulated Rupin on his sacrilegious and horrendous act. At this point, the Emperor Frederick had been dead for some 2 years, and there were barely any restraints on limits on Luther's behavior at all. Luther took one of these abducted women, a certain Katerina von Bora, as his wife, or rather as his partner in adultery. For it was certain that the horrendous sycophant was not able to be validly married. For the marriage is valid only between legitimate persons, that is, between persons who are actually free to contract a marriage. But Luther had already vowed himself to chastity before God as a member of the order of St. Augustine, and had doubled this commitment through his ordination to the priesthood. Caterina, as a Cistercian nun, was similarly solemnly vowed to chastity before God. This binding nature of vows is a fundamental principle of both natural and divine law, and is confirmed by sacred scripture. He gets into that in Ecclesiastes. It is well known that as long as Caterina cohabitated in Wittenberg with Luther, she would also share her company and favors freely with the young scholastics there. Indeed, she was said to be like the proverbial she-donkey of Jerusalem, which was available for the common use of all. That's
Okay, don't hold back, man. Say it like it is.
yeah, like I said, he saw all this stuff going on, kind of like the author of another book that Father translated, The Mirror of Cruelty. I mean, the guy who wrote that again saw everything. I think it was Scottish. He was Scottish. Saw everything that was going down and penned it. So you gotta read that through the eyes of the guy who's, you might go, I can't believe that. Why would you think something like this of these other people? You saw somebody that's destroying and burning down your town, or in this case, destroying the church you grew up in. You're not going to be too happy about it if you have any kind of pious opinions and things. So yeah, they didn't hold back.
No, and I like it because right now, if you have people writing a book about what's going on in history now, about our society, our culture, let's go with our election. You've got the Trump derangement syndrome, and you've got the Democrat side too, and how that will be painted in a history book is going to be so different, I think, for persons years from now than those of us right now are going, wait a minute. Well, first of all, some of us are being silenced. You've been silenced before for speaking truth on one of these social media sites. I've had
a lot. I mean, Rona
yeah,
days, yeah, I was playing
right. So truth is being twisted. So again, it makes me smirk and smile to hear this guy to know, no, I'm here. This is what culture is saying. These are what the people around him right now are saying. Boy, the glorious, if the people have him elevated to such a great guy, look at Martin Luther did this. You better go back and see who this man really was, because your eternity depends on it. You're in a religion founded by a man who is known to be a lunatic, who is known to be heretical, who is known to be just debauched, drunk, his tongue.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about the drunken part is, as the case with many Germans, often Luther and his friends would seem to be perfectly sober as long as they were seated at the table, which you gotta do that, gotta do that now. But as soon as they stood up, it became clear they were utterly intoxicated, lacking control of their hands, feet, and tongues. And if they were not able to control the limbs of their bodies, how much more surely were their brains addled? And he talks about just how they imagine in a word, you think of like a dance club in a sense. And that's what he brings up, because these guys were just pounding drinks, dancing like,
Drunken sailors.
like, yeah, MTV at the beach, whatever it is, things like that level of stuff. But no, you're right. I mean, to the history is this, history is written by either the winners, heretics, whatever. I mean, Alphonsus's book, History of Heresies, talks about we get to the 16th century when all the heresies come together like water in a sink. But I mean, like you said, even modern stuff. I mean, I'm Southern. I don't look at Lincoln as what most other guys do, as we say, because no one knows that Jefferson Davis had two adopted black kids. Yet the winners write history, so we're the racist, or that the Democrats are so bad in the 1860s. No, actually, they were the ones that was trying to get the slaves to be known as people. It was the Northerners that were even worse, right, if you read their stuff. But no one likes to read. It's just we're told what to believe. And there's it can go from, and actually you look at Luther gets into you, because of him, you probably get the French Revolution, which you get communism from French Revolution, which you get the Civil War, which is the U.S. version of the French Revolution. If I can go a little extreme, a lot of people You get that. So it all sprouts from the errors of one, which goes back to the fall of the garden, obviously, and errors beforehand. And so yeah, nothing is not connected. There's always something. I mean, the guys in uh was it uh, the later tyrants looked at Luther as a way because he went after a big time Jew. He was a big time Jew hater. I mean, the stuff he wrote about the Jews were just make you
What
blush.
Luther wrote?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's not made for TV stuff. And
Wow.
so they were talking about what they did in Germany and during World War II was stuff that Martin Luther came up with and said, and they just took it to the next level.
Wow. So what do we know about Lang then? Was he a layman? Was he a priest? Was he obviously he's a
I think
Catholic
he was a
probably?
professor at University of Paris.
And so as you said earlier, these are people who sought scholarship and not, even though it was a Catholic university, not necessarily anything that just glorified the Catholic faith, but anything that just spoke truth.
Yeah, I don't know what his motivation in writing the book. I mean, it might have been just because, sitting there one day, let me get this out. I mean, but let's see, 1780, was it 1581 was when published, so he was born. I mean, he was in his mid 80s or
Yeah.
late 80s when he got published. So, or that was published. So it could have been,
He was 82 when it was published, so he had to be like in his late 70s when he
yeah,
started
who
it.
knows how long it takes to get published back then? I don't know. I mean, right now, I mean, I could publish a book in probably 5 minutes. Then it's probably a lot different. I mean, so I don't know exactly when he wrote it, but at least, I mean, he was there. He had the fact, he saw people firsthand. He went to go get more information if he needed it. And again, he was at a resource in France where he said that France did not embrace any of these heresies at the time. They were obviously looking and seeing what was
They
going
waited
on.
until the Olympics of 2024, then they wanted to embrace it, right? Oh, wait,
I
wrong,
should go
wrong
back longer.
podcast, wrong podcast.
You go to the FR on that one. And maybe before that, when the kings were centralized, everything goes into centralization, which Luther was all for centralization of government and then kicking the state, kicking the church out and being him, he's in control of everybody. And I'm top dog. That we have the same problem today when someone wants to run the ship. We think, hey, one person can run the whole thing. It's the mindset from that arrogance
Yeah.
from that idea.
Yeah.
Don't question me.
Yeah. When you first read the book, what were the most salient parts to you? Like, wow. Because I think, as I said earlier, we tend to think we know who Luther was more or less. But when we read these true accounts, sometimes we're like, whoa, whoa, did not know this, or that.
Yeah, I mean the fifth, just the line, the fifth gospel. That was the first time I heard that phrase, and I mean it makes sense because he created the fifth gospel. And Lang, puts that down a lot. He goes, like with the evils that came out of it. He goes, that's the evils of the fifth gospel. Here's the running fruits of the fifth gospel. Here's how the fifth gospel destroyed this, or if things that went down that was bad. He goes, here's just more of the fifth gospel for you. He really pounds that away. But yeah, I mean the she donkey in Jerusalem. Now, see, you don't hear that one too often, and
No.
just with the atrocities after from him. I mean, yeah, I didn't know much about the Jewish connection, like I said, but he doesn't bring it up in here, but you can see it coming. And then just the violence that the royalty, the royal members in that area did to the just the hoi polloi at the time. Just we're gonna kill it. And it wasn't like they just went, 50 of them. It was a slaughter fest. And again, as Lane brings up from the fifth gospel, here's the charity of the fifth gospel right there.
Wow. Do you know any Protestants that have read this book? And have you gotten any feedback? Mostly
No,
Catholics, right?
I had a DVD that I burnt uh that was out for 6 years ago, and I used to pass it out when I drove Uber for 4 years in Colorado and went to festivals to give out sacramentals and things, and I'd have the Luther DVD, but I just had Luther on it, didn't say anything. So I don't know if anybody even watched that, which wasn't even at the level of,
What we
wow,
read in
this
this
is
book.
kind of like pounding, but no, I mean, I bought it. I sent it to a couple friends of mine who have Protestants in their families to see if they want to read it and give it, put it on their coffee table or something. Like, hey, let me see when their family comes over. See, let me take a look at this. Or
Yeah.
no, I have no clue if any have or not. That'd be fun to see.
It would, because I do think, we Catholics need to take back our church. And so go ahead and read this book and find out some of the truth. And then it would be fun to challenge people who are pro Luther, pro what he did, and just say, well, what about the time that he did such and such? And you're like, well, what do you mean he did such? And yes, this is written by his contemporary back in 1800s, French University, or not 1800s, 1500s, but I think as much as you and I love, it seems that we love the sarcasm of the tone, truth is more important to us. And to put it out there, just to put it out there and let people see, you can judge from someone who wrote 500 years later about this man based on, third and fourth and fifth, levels of sourcing.
Yeah, I'll
Or
read
at
a little bit
least get
from
the
the.
opinion of one guy who lived with him then, and then another guy who lived with him then, and compare those sources.
Yeah, I'll just read this a little bit from one of the wars that went down. Okay. Under the pretext of Luther's new gospel, they began to seize the property of the churches and religious houses on a large scale. Luther himself added sparks to this fire, for he began to declare that it was perfectly legitimate for the populace to seize the property of monasteries and that they were fully justified in doing this. In this way, Luther incited the common people who, gullible, ignorant, and inconsistent, to rise up against their rightful masters and to violate the laws of nature by rejecting legitimate authority and the principles of private property. As a consequence of this, a revolt among the peasants was stirred up, and countless thousands of these wretches lost their lives, having fallen victims not only to their inherent foolishness, but to the venom of Luther's insanity. It was during this war that Anton, Duke of Lorraine, and his brother Claude, Duke of Guise, maybe pronounced that wrong,
We'll cut you some slack.
yeah, obtained a notable victory. But this single victory, though fortunate, was at the cost of 1,500 ignorant peasants who died as a result of their misguided uprising. And the historians written by the French of the whole series of outbreaks of peasant rebellions attest that no less than 26,000 human lives were lost. And they killed 26,000 in those days. You didn't have
8 billion
ARs or
population, right?
yeah, it was like kind of like when Clinton said that the blood in Jerusalem during the Crusades ran up to the knees, and they're like, "Wait a minute, did you have the automatic bow and arrow at the time? You didn't have bombs or anything like that. How do you kill that many for this stuff? You kill 26,000 like that? I mean, it's hand-to-hand combat. Maybe there's a cannon every so often, but it's mostly going to be swords and maybe arrows and things like that." By this time, but by this point in time, virtually all the cities in Germany have become infected with Lutheran heresy. As a result of this, the former academies and facilities of theology were almost all reduced to extinction. Indeed, all learning and philosophy declined most severely, for Luther maintained that the basics of grammar and the rudiments of language were all that were needed to understand Scripture. And he goes on a little bit more of more stuff like the Holy Roman Emperor in 1526 summoned the princes electors to the empire to consult regarding sending military force to Hungary, as I mentioned before that. And because the princes had fallen under the way of Luther's heretical dogmas, they consulted with him on the matter and the course of action they should take. And Luther advised them that according to his own fifth gospel, it was not permissible to take up arms against the Turks for those who now gave their loyalty to Christ. And that's when the Hungarian king died. And he goes, "See, O reader, the fruits and usefulness of this new fifth gospel. See here the damage done by the frauds, cunning, and lies of this miserable and contemptible heretics, whose evil is truly equal to that of the demonic minions of hell." Again,
Wow, he doesn't hold
tell us
back.
how you really feel.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, so I think truly anyone who is a history buff should get their hands on this, because to me, again, flavor it up with sarcasm, but when the truth is still in there. And I'm a fan of primary sources, a fan of someone who's living at that time. No one trusts the internet. No one trusts knowledge. No one trusts your word, your vow these days. So, all of those things, every word that they put on paper was taken much more seriously back then than they are today, because they accounted the consequences more greatly than they do today. So it would seem to me that what Laing is writing is just so much more credible because of all those things, because of him valuing his word, being alive when Luther's there, seeing what's going on with the rest of society. At this point, the church has already been split now for what, 20 years? By the time Laing is writing this.
Yeah, it'd be just like if you're well, just take like a sports analogy. I'm a 1990 World Series Reds Oakland A's, and I write a book saying I went to all the games. I'm from this area. I work for the Cincinnati Choir or Sports Illustrated, whatever at the time.
Right.
Here's the play-by-play, and also, by the way, you can look it up. And here's the game. Here's the game film too to go with.
Right. Right. And that's what we need, and that's what this book provides. So, again, for the viewers, James Laing was alive, wrote this book. Father Nixon translated it. And my guest here today published it because he and I both believe it needs to get into your hands. And that's why I wanted him on this show here. You published this, and we're going to do some more shows on some of the other books that you talked about, because we're like, have to put that R-rated warning, kind of funny, not funny, right? But when we do some of those other books, how can people get this book? Sensus Fidelium is the publisher, and you are the president of that. So can't get it on the big box stores right now because they don't want to, or can you?
Yeah, I mean, people can. There's been a couple Catholic bookstores that have asked to, get the wholesale prices. So there's a link. I've been able to figure out how to do it, and I give them the link, and they can buy it right off the bat. And so some mom and pop stores have them. Yeah, Sense of Fidelium Press. Senseofidelium.com is the regular website. Senseofideliumpress.com is the publishing company, and we got. See, started October of last year. Let's see, we got about 85 books up right now.
Wow. Wow.
A lot translated into Spanish, so probably 2 to 1. I didn't get everything done in Spanish, but most of it, I haven't gotten this one translated yet into Spanish, but I may try to do that. But yeah, so it's at the senseofideliumpress.com. It's apparently on Amazon. I have no clue how that's happened. I got kicked off a month after starting to press, so permanently banned from Amazon. But
and you mean after starting what? Clown Planet News? Which press?
The press. I started that a year ago. The Clown Planet. I haven't done Clown Planet, man, about a year and a half. I just ran out of time. I started a new news show, News from the Pew. So I do that every Thursday, but people being asking me, get back into doing Clown Planet, which all I did was take a bunch of the nutty stuff, and I would just, all right, here's the link, here's the story, this is what's going on. And if you don't like what I'm saying about it, here's the paragraph that came from. And it's kind of like this. Here's what happened.
We're going to give you what we see as truth, what we see as properly scholarly sourced, credible. And you do that with what you will. And, all the jokes aside, we are going to have to answer to God. And if you have a friend who's, been, raised into the Protestant faith, they really do need to go. And I like to tell people, look at this, look where it came from. Are you following truth? Or like the people who say, I don't believe in Catholicism. I argue with them. I'm like, no, you don't disagree with Catholicism. Because I know you. You disagree with what you think Catholicism is. You disagree with what someone else might have said Catholicism is, but that's not what it was. We want you to go back to truth in this book too.
One of his friends, it's not in the book, but one of his friends was famous. It was his right-handed man, I forget his name right now. Melanchthon is said to have told his mom when his mom asked about converting, and he told her that it's easier to live as a Protestant, but it's better to die as a Catholic.
Oh, that's pretty powerful. Easier to live as a Protestant because we'll just
whatever you want.
Okay, yeah. Oh, don't like that. Let me start a new religion.
Yeah, I got the
golden ticket. I don't like that marriage thing. I'm going to start my own religion. Oh, I don't like that church on Sunday thing. We're going to start our own religion. It's crazy. Well, I appreciate going over this with you. I do want all of you to get your hands on this book. Again, it's called The Devil's Bagpipe, The True Life of Martin Luther. And it is really interesting reading. It is, I love the tone. I'm sorry to say that. I love sarcasm, but I love the tone. I love the directness. And I think if you're like me, you're going to like this book too. It's pretty straightforward, written by somebody who is, as we've said several times, contemporary. And then we can get that book then from sensusfidelium.org, sensusfideliumpress.com.
.com. I guess I
Yeah,
was able to
it's
get
in the
the
show
.com.
notes. Just click on the show notes there. What else are some of the things that people can find that you've published? We're going to draw some people over there because you got some
Oh,
good
published
stuff.
ones. I got the Leo the 13th's book on humility, Christian Patience by Bishop Olathorn. I just uploaded about 8 books of Alphonsus that, Dignities and Duties of Priests, Victories of Martyrs, History of Heresies, on the Psalms, the book on the True Spouse of Christ, which is for nuns. But hey, you still get some stuff out. Even the Dignities and Duties of Priests, I read as a layman going, there's a lot of good virtue that he writes about in there. Prayer is treatise on prayer. Just go
So
down the
these are
list.
just good things. I just wanted to let people realize that there's some good books coming through. Then you've got
Yeah.
some coming through that are pretty, which again we said before we went on the air, some graphic ones that were truthful about what'd you say it would be R rated if it were a movie right now
Mirror
because it
of
was
Cruelty. It's an R-rated book. That it's not like a gruesome as I'll take that back. If it was put in a movie, I don't know. Did you see that the other day that they made Peter Pan into a horror movie? And
no.
yeah, it's like I guess Winnie the Pooh is a horror movie now too. But these slasher films, okay, not a fan of slasher
Right, but
films,
this
but
is truths of things that
these are
really
true
took
slasher films.
place.
This is yeah.
But the true
I mean, even
story.
like the image behind me right there, that's the English martyrs being gutted. It's and on
Oh,
top of that's the ones that Thomas More saw walking joyfully to their like as a bridegroom to the wedding feast. And that's what it says on top, walking joyfully, and they're you see them getting the hearts taken out or gutted or hung, drawn, and quartered and all that stuff. So yeah, that's over an altar. That's the altar piece at the
yeah.
Charter House in England.
I have to tell you, I went to Uganda and I went to the I think it's called Shrine of the Ugandan Martyrs. And if people don't know what that is, Father, or yeah, St. Charles Lwanga, who was the leader of them, basically the king that they were working for was a young man, but he was also a homosexual and he was trying to have sex with all these men. And Charles Lwanga is like, I will not. And so the king was going after all these pages, all these young boys. And so these boys defended, um, they stood on the truth of the faith and they gave their lives up and they died horrific deaths. So if you go to the shrine in Uganda, they have this guy died this way, this guy died, and they have statues of this guy being disemboweled, and the statue of this guy having a dog like eat his guts out, stuff like that. And it sounds bad with me saying it on the air, but when you're there, that's not the feeling you got. You got this feeling of holiness, as you said earlier, and I just can't remember at this point if we said it on the air or off, is that people are willing to die, people are willing to take pain for the truth of the gospel, and something in that elevates you, it strengthens you, and it says truth is powerful, and the most painful things people went through
Oh,
needs
yeah.
to be told because souls will get to heaven. And I think that's why these books that you're talking about that you're publishing are so important.
Like Victories of the Martyrs. It's you see how thick it is. I mean, this could be like a weapon if you hit somebody with it. The first third of it is on the Japanese martyrs. Oh no, the final third is on the Japanese martyrs. And there's one story about an older guy that they were gonna yak his head off, and he goes, "Hold on, please, let me go home and get changed." And they thought they were gonna put on some junk clothes or something. He gets home and puts a suit on, and then goes over to it gets cleaned up because he's all joyful and happy to it's my time, I'm gonna get ready. And so yeah,
Wow.
it's
Wow.
what would we think? I mean, we
And what do
might
the
think
people on
that.
the outside think? They look at that and they're like,
Yeah, that touches
you
people.
want what they have.
Yeah.
You want what they have. All right. Well, we're going to have links in the show notes to this book, The Devil's Bagpipe. I always have to keep reading because I know I mess it up. The True Life of Martin Luther. And when you're there, please go peruse it and see some of the other books. I know that some have been translated by Father Robert Nixon, who I've had on this show, who translates from Latin, which these are books that have been languishing sadly. And that I believe the Lord is bringing forward now. He's translating them into English so that people can start learning these kinds of truths that have long since been, hidden or squelched. And now God is saying, no more. The truth has got to come out. So get your hands on this book. Again, just click on it in the show notes below. And how can people find you? You want them just to go to the same website or?
You can sensefidelium.com, sensefideliumpress.com. People can contact me through either one of those, and Yeah, that's pretty much it. If it's anything sensibidalium, that's me.
It's you. It's you, Steve Cunningham. Thank you for being on the show. I would like to tell you guys, go there to that press. Also follow me on the social media sites that I'm still on while I'm still allowed to be on them. This one, Rumble, X, Instagram, Facebook, and post your comments. Let us know, what are your thoughts? I just want to get out truth. Speaking of truth, come to the Truth Speakers Conference, the 3rd annual Disrupting the Culture with Truth Conference on October 12th here in Virginia Beach, where we will be having the Countdown to the Kingdom crew, Christine Watkins, Daniel O'Connor, Mark Mallet, Father Chris Alar from Stockbridge, Mass, and myself. We will all be speaking and telling you truth that you are, can't be censored. Let's just say that. Truth that can't be censored. Get your tickets at truthspeakers.org. And that also is right below in the show notes. So I think I've said all the stuff that I'm supposed to say. Now I'll just say the fun stuff. And let's see if I've trained my guest properly, right? Okay, so I am Dr. Christine Bacon. You've been watching Breakfast with Bacon. And I'd like to remind you always to live your life
Sunny side up. Is that it?
sunny side up.
There you go.
Yes. Amen.